because there had been so many Mars books. It just didn't make any sense for me to spend a year trying to write this book, you know, not under contract, when all these really famous people who were hard science fiction writers had probably done it a whole lot better than I could. I had an idea whose time had really come, but I hadn't gotten into it early enough. Okay, so I promised to give you guys at least 15 to 20 minutes to ask questions, so fire away, anything you want. Yes, sir.
Well, suppose you got your novel finished. I seem to remember having heard back 10, 15 years ago, you're a brand new novelist with no credentials, you send the whole novel to a publisher and wait for them to say we're interested or not, and so on. And if you get, they would like to buy it, they often send you a boilerplate contract, at which point you go shopping for a agent, if you're smart.
That would still work, except it's very outmoded advice.
That's what I want to know. What's the current model?
Well, these days, so many publishers have closed themselves off to anything except agented submissions that it really doesn't seem practical. The other thing is that who has the time to sit and wait on their butt with one publisher for a whole year? Okay, if you have gone ahead and these days you query first. Almost all publisher guidelines say query first, so that means your book is not unsolicited. Okay, because if they said send it, you sent it, it's requested material. So, but you know, truthfully, and people used to say that simultaneous submissions were verboten and stuff. You still have to be a little careful about simultaneous submissions. I mean, I wouldn't send it to two branches of the same publisher, for goodness sakes, at the same time. That could be embarrassing. But as long as the publisher knows that you are heavily marketing this book and you're honest about it, you don't lie, then, you know, they would really rather you send it only to them if they requested it. But they also know that even a solicited book can take them 6 to 8 to 10 months to a year to look at. So they know that you're not going to sit there and just wait. Not if you're sane. I mean, you know, for a year for this book. So if by any chance you find yourself with an opportunity to, I mean, you're in a workshop with Patrick Nielsen Hayden or somebody, and he says, that really sounds good. I want you to send it to me, and I'm really interested in reading it. So you can actually, you know, have some kind of good idea that he's going to read it pretty timely fashion. So you go home and you send it off, fire it off the next week, and, you know, and you actually hear from Patrick Nielsen Hayden within a month or two that he read it and adored it. That would be a good time to call an agent and say, I have an acceptance by Tor. And, you know, and when they call you up and tell you they'd like to acquire the book, you call them up, you say, oh God, this is so wonderful, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And my agent will get back to you, and then you fax a whole bunch of agents saying, I've just received an acceptance from Tor. Would you like to agent this book? And that way, the agent doesn't have to do very much work. They just have to negotiate a good contract for you. And you can probably save yourself the actual 15% of their commission in better terms. It used to work like this all the time. It can still work like this sometimes. But the idea that you're going to send a book in, wait a whole year. Heck, I've heard of people getting getting an acceptance from a second publisher the year after their novel appeared from a different one. You know, we really would like to publish your novel, blah-de-blah. And, you know, it came out last year. You know, I mean, they'll get an acceptance from Berkeley, and when the book appeared from Tor the previous year, or it's already in production or something. So the other thing is that if you do have a book that has been making the rounds, and it does sell, it is a courtesy to write to those publishers and say, hi, you know, thank you very much for considering my book, whatever the title. I'm withdrawing the book from consideration because it has been acquired by another publisher. Thank you very much for your time, sincerely. That's all you have to write. And it's a courtesy Okay, so, all right, any other questions? Does that answer that question?
Well, the sort of a flip side, I guess, is it nowadays, should you be thinking about sending query letters directly to agents before you go to a publisher?
Of course, that's what
Okay.
I've been saying.
Well, no, okay, I missed that interpretation, I guess.
No, I mean, so many publishers won't look at it without an agent. If
So you really have to sell it to the agent first, in effect.
Yes, you should be querying agents
Okay.
to start with. And query as many agents as you can properly query with your novel, having researched them, made sure they're real, and having made sure that they like your kind of book.
And
Okay?
simultaneous queries are okay?
So you can send 100,000 queries if you can find that many agents all at the same time, you know, that represent your work. Actually, there aren't 100,000 agents, but you know, the point is made. You can send 100 queries. You can send 200 queries. If you've sent 100 queries and you haven't gotten a single request to read, even if you've sent 20 queries and you haven't gotten a single request to look at the book, your query letter sucks, and you better do something about it. You better rewrite it. If in sending 20 queries out, you don't get at least a couple of requests to look at a partial chapters and an outline, you had better, you know, rethink that query letter. And if you get, I know one guy, poor little guy, I'll call him Jeff because that's his name, but you don't know him. Anyway, Jeff, I helped him write his query letter, and I realized at some point that I wasn't doing him any favors. It's not like he came to a class. I just, you know, I knew him on the internet. And I reviewed several of his query letters without working with him on his book at all. And I gave him very specific advice. And then when he didn't produce a very good query letter, I actually suggested wording and stuff. So his query letter got to look pretty sharp after a while, after several iterations of this kind of thing. He gets all kinds of requests to look at that book. He's never yet had anybody who's read a partial request the full. He's had a couple of requests for fulls, but they asked for the full manuscript as opposed to the partial. And he's never had any interest expressed once they've read his style because his writing just is not that good. And I tried to, you know, make some suggestions as to how he could improve, but he's one of those writers who's kind of deaf on that score. He doesn't really want to hear. So you're really not doing yourself any favor or the agent by having a query letter that is much better than your book. So if you sent out a whole bunch of queries and you've sent out partials on your book, and none of those agents have expressed any interest at all in reading the full manuscript, go back to your book, because your query has gotten better than your book, and this can happen.
Is children's market different?
It depends on what aspect of it you're talking about. Are you talking about children's picture books?
No, I've written a little over 200 pages, and it's basically about, it's supposed to be a ghost story, but it's really not. It turns out these people from the past, and it's, they keep going back and forth, and it has to do with the family that's everything. They build an inn in late 1700s.
Okay, but they classify these things by the age of the reader.
Okay, I would say.
Is it like a middle grade reader?
Yeah, I'd say between the age of 9 and 15, but adults, like to my adult children like it.
Don't ever put that in your query letter.
No,
My family loved it, my husband loved it, my
I
mother
know.
cried. Don't put that in.
I wouldn't do that. No,